Welcome back, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of businesses that you can start and try and categorise those in terms of the level of effort and complexity that there is in running them. This is something that I talk about in the second chapter of my book, Start to Exit. And what I've done in there is I've overlaid different types of businesses onto the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, the rainbow that you're all familiar with has the low energy end down in the red, and as you pass up through the colours, you get to the higher violet or purple end of the spectrum. And I think you can put different types of businesses along this spectrum as well, indicating the levels of complexity in running them and managing them. So let's have a look at the types of businesses that I've listed across this electromagnetic spectrum. At the low energy red end, I've given lifestyle businesses as the first type. And a lifestyle business actually can be very broad, but I think the key here is that you are entering into it to stay relaxed. It's really as a means of funding your hobbies, your family life, and you're not trying to take over the world and get into the complexities of managing staff and a huge growth business. Next up, I think professional services are the next easiest. They're sitting here in the orange part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, of course, if you are a solicitor or an accountant or an estate agent, you may beg to differ. But these businesses are really consulting businesses. So although there are complexities in running them, they're relatively straightforward in the fact that it's really down to the knowledge of the individuals that make up the team. And the business grows off the back of the consultants themselves offering those services. Therefore, slightly more difficult, I think, are running a shop and running an e-commerce site, because now you've got all the issues of the professional services, but you're having to manage stock and you're having to ship goods. So you've got warehouse control and you've got logistics to consider. And of course, if you're selling goods and managing your warehouse and your logistics, you've got all that extra complexity, both in terms of forecasting, but also in terms of managing your cash flow. Next up, systems integrator. So they're sitting firmly in the centre of this spectrum. And a systems integrator, although it sounds like a complicated term, actually includes professions and businesses, for example, plumbing and electrician. And this is because these kinds of trades and these kinds of businesses need extra knowledge about different items, different products, to put them together. So a plumber, for example, will have a lot of knowledge about the different types of equipment and the different types of devices and products that make up, for example, a kitchen or a bathroom. So they're a bit more than just a shop. Not only do they have to source the different products for you, but they have to make them work together. They have to understand which ones are better for different jobs. And of course, in the modern world, we hear about systems integration all the time in more high-tech businesses where people are, for example, putting together computer equipment. Next up, I've listed applications and software as a service. So these require a lot of knowledge. This is where you're actually writing software and you're writing things to sell. So it's not only behaving like a shop and a systems integrator and pulling different things together, but you're also creating stuff. So there's an element of intellectual property being created here as well. The next one, which is even more complicated, is true manufacturing. And this is where you're manufacturing a physical product. Not only do you have to sell this and make sure quality control is good and that it works, but you've also got to source all the different components. You've got bill of materials, you've got a production line, you've got to make sure that all of these things arrive on time. So you've got a logistical problem both in the supply, but also in the sales. Finally, at the high end of the spectrum, which is the purple end, we've got the high-tech startup. And this really brings all of the things I've talked about together, plus the fact that you're actually researching and developing. So there's actually an element of risk here about whether the thing that you're doing is going to work. And these are the kinds of companies that require venture capital investment in order to take you through that period of uncertainty and develop prototypes. And there's a lot more managing that takes place in these types of businesses, both in terms of the new product or the new service, but also the fact that you've got to grow pretty quickly, you've got to recruit talented staff, and you're really operating in the knowledge-based economy. And so with this in mind, I think you've got to, as you start out on your business, think, where do you fit on this spectrum? How much effort is there in putting together the type of business you're considering and all of the complexities that go with that? Is it just a case of selling something, or are you going to have to make and test and register your intellectual property and protect your intellectual property before you can start making a sale? And how easy are those sales going to be? Are they very technical or are they very straightforward, such as out of a corner shop?